So today I'm talking to my naturopath, Dr. Emily Penney. And just to give you a little background, in 2015, shortly after I'd moved to North Carolina, I started to feel, the technical term I think is draggy, exhausted, really just generally not good. So I started to look for a doctor local to me in North Carolina. I had moved from Philadelphia, where I had been seeing a really great integrative physician who'd helped me figure out what was wrong with me in ways that other doctors had never been able to. So I knew I wanted to see a doctor who was going to be able to think outside the box and understand issues that I was having, such as recurrent adrenal fatigue, and which was related to an MTHFR gene mutation. And so I was super lucky to happen upon Dr. Emily Penney at Collective Wellness and start to see her. And within months of seeing her, I really felt a million times better. And I've been seeing her ever since. So to start, I thought I would ask you about your background, where you got your education and your degree.
Okay, so I got my naturopathic doctorate at Bastyr University. And Bastyr University is a 4-year naturopathic medical school in Olympia, or actually in Seattle, Washington. I went to undergrad in Olympia.
To further that, I'm kind of interested because I like reading a lot on the internet and getting to know what the latest information is out there. How do you keep up with the latest research?
Great question. Obviously on the internet, there's a wealth of information, and a lot of times I find that it's actually more challenging to know how to qualify your information, right, than any lack thereof. So I tend to read peer-reviewed journals, and there are some good ones that are specifically for naturopathic medicine and integrative medicine, and then there's just kind of the standard conventional journals, peer-reviewed being considered the gold standard in the science field, right? So some of the better naturopathic ones are the NDNR, which is Naturopathic Doctor, NDNR, National Review, I think is what it is.
Okay.
And then the Townsend Letter is also a very good one. You might be familiar with that one. I just actually happened to live in Port Townsend for a while, so it's kind of funny connection, but that's also a very good one. And then there's so many wonderful groups these days in the social media, and there's a closed group on Facebook for my profession, and we share a lot of information there as well. So that's very dynamic and a nice way to kind of connect with peers also.
I could see that getting pretty, I could see people having different opinions when they share information. Do you find that a lot?
Sure, although it's a pretty respectful group, and because we all have the same basic background, they only allow people with the same level of training to join the group.
Okay.
And so people do disagree in my field on how things should be done, but we have a big toolbox, so sometimes it's really helpful to get, an extra 1,000 set of eyes on a problem, and just see, okay, well, maybe I could look at this from a different angle. So, yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, is your profession licensed in North Carolina?
So it's not. So naturopathic medicine is licensed in I think about 20, maybe 25 states right now. And in Washington State, where I was trained, we're licensed as primary care physicians, and I was trained in that capacity. And North Carolina has been working on licensure for about I don't know, 30 years, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah. So it varies state to state.
Yeah.
The Bastyr University is among 5 accredited universities for naturopathic medicine in the country. And so the problem with not being licensed is not so much an issue of practice, because I can practice pretty much the same regardless. But it doesn't protect the public from knowing who they're seeing, because naturopathic doctor is not a protected title in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And so somebody can get their online PhD for a few $1,000s and call themselves a doctor. and most people don't know the difference.
Yeah.
So it's important. Licensure is important for that reason primarily, and then also scope of practice. So I can't prescribe medication in North Carolina, and I can't do minor surgery in North Carolina, which is what I'm trained to do, but obviously I can't do that here without licensure. So, I work around it because mostly my training with medication was to get people off of medications, not put them on.
Mm-hmm.
So, but protecting the public is really the main issue.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So why do people end up choosing to see a naturopathic physician?
People primarily have one of a few different reasons for going. So one of the biggest ones that I hear is that they've tried everything and nothing worked, and so I'm kind of their last resort. Actually, we used to make a joke that we should start a retreat center with a ranch called the Last Resort Ranch Healing Center, because honestly, I hear that probably on a daily basis. So, they've tried medication, they've tried all the conventional stuff, and it just didn't work for them for whatever reason. A lot of times they couldn't handle the treatments. They got a side effect from the medication, or they, or just didn't do anything, or they, think something like that. So that's a big one. And then probably the other main reason is that they just don't want to take medication. They know that if they go, that's what's going to be prescribed. And I think especially with the internet and with social media, there's so much more information out there of how that kind of treatment, especially for chronic illness, it's actually makes things worse over time for a lot of people in a lot of cases. And so people know that I just don't want to do that to myself and make myself actually sicker in the long run. And so they are seeking alternatives, and they find me.
Mm-hmm. And then when they do find you, what are the most common issues that they come to you with?
Well, as I'm trained as a primary care physician, and so I have that kind of, whatever walks in my door, I can treat kind of training. But there's a few things that I have specialized in over the years. And so that's things like digestive disorders where, irritable bowel syndrome, or, reflux disease, gastroesophageal reflux disease, or maybe just generally something's wrong down here, but nobody can figure out what it is. I see that a lot.
Okay.
So that's a big one. And, in naturopathic medicine, digestion is such a critical part of health. We see it that way. And so I usually end up working on that a little bit with everybody anyway. Do a lot of women's health stuff. And then, as you mentioned earlier, one of the things that I've looked at more closely is MTHFR, or genetic SNPs, things like that. So that's a folate metabolism issue that's actually quite common. I have it myself, and it can have a big impact on fatigue and detoxification.
Mm-hmm.
So fatigue is also a big one that people see me for. And then autoimmune conditions and allergies are kind of the other two big ones that I work on. Autoimmune things like rheumatoid arthritis, Hashimoto's, thyroiditis, things like that. And then both food sensitivities and more classical environmental kind of allergies.
I think one of the reasons that I really liked you right away was you immediately related to when I said, I'm looking for a doctor to help treat me. I have this MTHFR gene mutation. You said, oh, I have that too. And that just really, that connected with me, because when you see a doctor who's had the same issues or similar issues, who's been through things, there's just something about that is irreplaceable to me anyway. So.
Oh, well, that's great.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I had a realization fairly early on that I was blessed with lots of health problems, that I could learn how to fix them and help other people with them, really. I was, that's very common in my profession, actually, that people go into it because that was the only way they could find to heal themselves. And then they want to give that out to the world,
So do the people who come to see you use their HSA accounts? And if they do, can you talk a little bit about how that works when they come to see you?
Sure. So a HSA, or a health savings account, is an option that's available for a lot of people who have maybe a high deductible insurance plan, things like that, which is a really good way to go if you're interested in naturopathic or alternative medicine, because you aren't paying such a high premium because you have that high deductible, but you can take the money that you've saved and actually put it into the HSA account and use that money for, it's more at your discretion. So we haven't ever had anybody denied for their health savings account funds to be used towards our fees, but I do suggest that people call and just double check. And FSA is the other one that's also typically used. It's good to check, and that way you make sure. They could feasibly deny it, but it hasn't actually come up.
I think the thing I learned recently was I didn't really know what the difference between FSA and HSA were, or the differences were. And with FSA, I believe it's the use it or lose it account. So by the end of the year, you, I'll need to research this more. You can lose the money that you put in there, whereas an HSA is basically a retirement account, and it's there until you're 65, at which point you can take it out with no issues. So it's better. It's kind of it's like all around better if you want to, like, you know, prepare for retirement and also save money on seeing naturopathic doctors. Because you're putting the money in there tax free, right? So you're basically getting an automatic 25% discount, which is pretty good. So, and you can, the other nice thing about it is you can use it towards supplements. So even with insurance, even in a state where you could take insurance, you can't use those funds. You can't use insurance will never cover supplements, which is unfortunate. Really is. But the HSA funding can be used towards supplements, and it can also be used for, you know, massage and acupuncture and any other kind of thing like that you would want. So it's definitely a good way to go. Cool. Is there anything else that you want people to know? Are there any other things that you'd like to explain to our audience about seeing a naturopathic physician, about seeing you? Sure. Yes, there's definitely some things that are helpful to kind of know to make the decision of whether to come in or not. So, I mean, I offer a complimentary 15-minute consult to any prospective patient. And so that's a really, you know, good way to kind of field some questions and get a general idea of how I might approach something and see if it's a good fit for you. But some other things, you know, because naturopathic medicine is a holistic approach, it's helpful to have some basic impetus to make some lifestyle changes. I definitely am willing to meet people where they're at, and there's no reason to feel intimidated and feel like you have to wait until you're eating perfectly or anything like that. But being willing to make some lifestyle changes is an important part of the healing process, because this is not just like a quick fix shop, right? It does require some effort and some input. That being said, when somebody's really, really tired, I get that they don't have the energy to do anything. And so a big part of my job is helping people feel better so that they can start taking care of themselves. Because, you know, if you're just depressed and tired, then you don't want to. You can't. Right? I totally get that. I've been there. And then other things, I think that's really the biggest thing. It's just that willingness to make some changes. And, you know, I had a patient yesterday who, you know, for her, it was a really big deal to just stop eating fast food. And that was a major accomplishment for her. Awesome. And I have other patients who are vegan and eat amazing, and, you know, like yourself, who that part of it wasn't really the issue. You know, so it's a broad spectrum. And you know, if I can't meet people where they're at, then I'm not doing my job. Well, thank you so much for this interview today. I learned a lot of things that I didn't know before we talked today. So it was pretty cool and eye-opening for me. Great. I'm really excited to share this with others. I hope you like and subscribe my video, and I look forward to hearing from you and hearing about your experiences. Please leave a comment below if you've seen a naturopath or if you're considering seeing one. and we'd love to hear from you. So thanks.
Thanks, Erin.
Sure.